How's it going, everybody? I'm really excited to introduce the next session for you guys, Lessons from the Frontier of Social VR, with our moderator, Mike Booth. Interesting thing about Mike Booth, who here is a gamer? Who's played video games? Okay, quite a bit. Have you heard of Left 4 Dead? Really cool thing is, before coming to Facebook, Mike Booth created Left 4 Dead. So help me, give him a round of applause to welcome him to the stage, Mike Booth.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I will put this here. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what we've learned at Facebook about social VR over the last half year or so. But first, what do we mean when we say social VR? Well, what differentiates social VR from just VR in general? Specifically for us, it is all about connecting people and enhancing relationships. So everything that we're doing in social VR is trying to connect you with people that you care about and enhance your existing relationships and bring people together, because we believe that in VR, people are the killer app. So how are we accomplishing this? So we have basically three pillars of social VR that we look to as we explore this space. The first one is to be in person with your friends. This is really the core thing, our North Star, our guiding light, that VR is amazing, but one of the most amazing things about VR is being in VR with someone else. You feel like you are actually there. We want to put that front and center whenever we can. Secondly, spending quality time together with those friends or those people that you're with. It's not enough that you're together in the space. We want you to be able to do more than chat. We want you to be able to do things you actually enjoy doing and have a good time doing them. And then thirdly is your personally meaningful content. While it's great to go, say, visit the surface of Mars, it's more exciting to go visit your childhood home, right? We want you to be able to have access to things that are personally meaningful to you and to your friends, things maybe you've posted to Facebook, those sorts of things. So let's first dive into being in person with your friends. So to be in person with your friends, you need to have a representation of yourself to be in person with. So this leads us to 2015. This is the Toybox, Oculus Toybox avatar. This is a static, non-animating, disembodied blue head. But this blue head and blue hands in VR blew my mind. Like, I have seen every AAA game ever, and when I was in VR with my friend in 2015, this just totally blew me away. Like, oh my God, I've never experienced anything like this. So this has been the guiding light for us of, like, how do we improve this? So from there, for the live keynote with Shrep at F8 in 2016, we tried to add likeness to this Toybox head. So we used some artistic liberties to sort of decorate this head so it sort of looked like me. So we had one that kind of looked like me and one that kind of looked like Shrep. This seemed to resonate. People enjoyed the presentation. So for Oculus Connect 3, by that time, we had invested in building a fully three-dimensional representation of an avatar. This includes a torso and inverse kinematics, because all we really know is where your head and where your hands are, so we have to infer everything else. Sort of moving towards an art style that is friendly and accessible, but still captures your likeness. Most importantly, can make eye contact, can be emotionally resonant. We learned a bunch of things doing this. Lucy Bradshaw and I went live with Zuck on stage at OC3 with this avatar. And then we shipped version 1 of Facebook Spaces this time last year with version 1 of our released avatars, and you can see the changes that were made there. Specifically things like, for example, the eyes. Instead of having three-dimensionally modeled eyes that had some benefits, but in this case looked a little disturbing. They were kind of spherical and bulbous. We went with the 2D texture. They're basically flat, textured eyes, but interestingly, you could still feel like you can make eye contact with your friends. So those avatars have been in Spaces since we launched, and just recently, in about the last month or so, we released Avatars version 2. And we'll talk a bit about what we learned with Avatars 1 and why we went to Avatars 2, but you can clearly see the evolution of basically my likeness in VR from Toybox to now. So Avatars 1.0, so they worked well. Like I think the main takeaway for us, the thing that we learned, is that these sort of stylized avatars that capture elements of your likeness resonated with people. They worked well. Most importantly, they were avatars worth taking a selfie of. Right? They were emotionally resonant. They could express emotion. They could make eye contact. They could lip sync. You actually felt like you were present with your friends. However, they did have limited likeness control. And by that, I mean these avatars are basically a Mr. Potato Head. That you have a head and you have like slots to put eye models into and a place to put a nose, a place to put a mouth. But for example, with the eyes, you couldn't scale the eyes. You couldn't rotate them. You couldn't move your eyes closer or farther away. So we could not, there are certain types of likenesses we couldn't capture that way. In addition, while they were expressive, there were clear limits to their expressibility with the way that we structured them. For example, the avatar's mouth is basically just a line. So to do certain emotes, like a duck face or some sort of like kind of thing, where your cheeks and your lips matter, we couldn't actually represent those at all. And then the lighting model that we used for these avatars was fairly simple. As you can see, there's no shadows on these avatars. They're pretty flat shaded, and the shaders are pretty simple. So taking what we've learned from Avatars 1, we wanted to keep moving things forward. So with Avatars 2, we greatly increased the likeness space. And I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but for every feature of your avatar, there are many parameters now that you can control. We greatly improved the quality. You can see a bit on this avatar here, the skin shaders, the hair shaders, the eyes. There's subtle shadows from my glasses on my cheeks, that sort of thing. So just in general, the lighting model and material qualities are much improved. We also implemented body shapes. This was something that I'll talk a little bit more about this, but the community directly asked for, and we implemented our first stab at controlling your body shape. And these avatars are more expressive. This is one of the core things that I'm most excited about with our avatars. We really want emotionally resonant avatars. We want you to be able to express yourself, and we want you to have those emotional warm fuzzies with people that you care about, and have that real connection. So we want to keep pushing forward with that. Okay, so when we talk about likeness space, if we compare the two avatars, they all have these various features, right? But the difference between 1.0 and 2.0 is for 2.0, every one of those features has at least 3, if not 4, parameters that you can modify. So a much broader likeness space. And you can see that here with this avatar, he's basically going to move all the controls off screen. And you can see that basically everything that's happening to this avatar was not possible with Avatars 1.0. You can change the size of your eyes, you can rotate your eyes, you can move them in or out or even up and down, and that is true for basically every feature of your face, including your entire face. All right. Yeah, I could watch that forever. Okay, some complications though with this, right? Like this is actually a very technically complicated thing to pull off, and we're very lucky that we have a number of very talented people from video games and film and visual effects that are working on the Avatars team that really understand this stuff. But what you're seeing here is like this goatee. This goatee can't just be a model that you stick on your chin, right? Or maybe a mustache you just stick on there, because as these parameters change, that needs to change with it. And what's interesting is this also holds true for things like glasses. You think, well, they're just rigid glasses, right? But there's no optometrist in VR to help you out here. These need to fit whatever head shape that you choose. So anything that you wear on your head also needs to morph to the head shape such that it fits. It doesn't cut through your head or cut through your hair or anything like that. So this results in a fairly complicated system that you notice, like we have a contiguous polygonal mesh here. There's no gaps or holes. This is not Mr. Potato Head where you're just plugging things in slots. This is all blend shapes and a lot of careful logic that lets all of these parameters work in parallel, keeping everything together and rendered well. As a result, these are some of the folks on the Facebook Spaces team. The avatars that we can generate for those folks, much higher quality, much better likeness. These are characters that were made by a character artist on our team. These are made with exactly the same tech. What I think is really exciting about these is these are pretty extreme, but they're all within the likeness space of the avatar system as it stands right now. Okay, so let's talk a bit about quality improvements with Avatars 2.0. What do we do there? So one of the first things are the eyes. Now, I think something that was really interesting, I mentioned this with the first avatars, is the eyes are just flat textures. There's no actual 3D geometry there. That works really well in that we can iterate very quickly. It's much faster to make a 2D image and put it on your avatar than to make a new 3D model and animate it. And you can actually feel like you make eye contact, but you can see from the version 1 avatars to the version 2, we've really invested, we've kept the same tech. We basically are still doing two-dimensional eyes, but we've invested in some very clever shaders such that the shaders actually imitate 3D geometry. So it seems like even when you look at them from edge on, they still look like they're three-dimensional. You can see here the little eye saccades as well. Like, it's important that the eyes look alive and real. In addition, we have a number of additional controls. You can see the pupil and iris can really dilate. They can get very small. This is a little weird because we just select one eye and start messing with it. Normally we wouldn't do that, but just to demonstrate that we can really control all the aspects of your eyes, which then we can use for different sorts of emotions. In addition, there was a lot of tech invested in skin shaders. So we're doing some subsurface scattering approximations for our skin shaders. It's a bit challenging to do this in real time, but basically what this means is that your skin looks like skin. Your skin is glowing and radiant and doesn't look like plastic or chalk. In addition, each skin shader has a primary and secondary color that's been carefully chosen by our art team, such that any skin tone that you choose looks beautiful and radiant, as well as like the default, the lip tones, etc. It all ties together. The hairstyles, this is something that people really index on. We've discovered that we can invest all of this technology and all the details of your face and whatnot, get all that right, but if your hair is off just a little bit, like, that's not me. So we have tried to invest in many hairstyles, and we're going to continue to add hairstyles over time, as well as the shaders themselves. So for example, like getting red hair, so it's nice and not brassy and all that sort of stuff, making it look great. It's important. So we did the same thing. Artists have really spent, they have a primary and secondary color and sheen shaders and all sorts of crazy stuff for each hair tone. In addition, we really want to capture everyone's hair. And different hairstyles require different technology. Like, for example, the shaved head there, right? That's not actually hair. That's a stubble shader to make that look right. And then when you get into various types of curly hair and whatnot, getting the physics right, making it move the right way is important, and we've tried to capture that. Body shapes. So body shapes are something that, frankly, I was hoping to avoid. Because you get into the whole, like, do these jeans make my butt look big problem, right? But the community was very clear. The community wanted body shape control, and for some people, right, if their body shape wasn't reasonably close, it didn't feel like it looked like them. So with Avatars 1.0, we were really sort of going for the bobblehead thing, where we hope we just focus on the head and ignore the little thin body there. So with Avatars 2.0, we generate your avatar, but we leave a very androgynous default body, but we give you the controls to change shoulder width or hip width or how thin or heavy you'd like to be. And then we've also worked to make these avatars more expressive. For example, with the hairstyles, again, we're going to continue to add hairstyles over time, but we've also included a wider array of hair colors. So if you got really awesome green hair, you can have your really awesome green hair in VR. Comparing emotes between Avatars 1 and 2, you can see that we can use those controls to improve the quality of the emotions that you can express. For example, when you frown, we can redden your face, right? When you laugh, we can pink up your cheeks. We can make your eyes change into laughing eyes more clearly. And then when you get into specific sorts of emotes, like here, when you get to disgust and sort of whatever, dude, those emotes were really, really hard to do with Avatars V1. In fact, we couldn't distinguish the two because we didn't have the lip shapes and eye control to be able to pull that off. So really excited about the array of emotions we can express, and we want to do more in the future. And as a result, we're really proud of the new avatars we've released in that we really think that we can capture many more people's likenesses in a higher quality way. All right, so let's move on to quality time. Speaking of quality time, thank you, got it, okay. The clock wasn't running, now it is, good. All right, so quality time, one of the things that we've looked at is game creation. And basically that's giving you the tools to make simple party games, etc. And why are we focusing on games? What we really want is, at this stage of the game, we want a social catalyst, right? We want to find those sorts of activities that are interesting, that give you an excuse to get together and do things, but don't consume all of your attention so you can focus on each other and have conversations. So one of the first things that comes up that fits that criteria is, hey, let's just have a deck of cards, deck of 52 playing cards in VR, because they're, it's been around for thousands of years. There's hundreds of games that you can play that way. Let's get together and play bridge or clubs or poker or hearts or whatever. It turns out that cards are a lot more challenging than they appear to do in VR. You basically have 52 little physics objects you're trying to control with oven mitts on. But we were able to boil it down to just a handful of verbs and release a deck of cards that's pretty easy to use and pretty fully functional. So here you're seeing one of the first things is the ability to deal the deck of cards. We've added this little dashed line to make it very clear where the card is going. Another finding is that physics in this case are not helpful. You actually don't want just arbitrary physics with your cards. You want to have very precise control of where all these cards go. The worst case situation would be you're half an hour into some game with your friends that you're really involved in. Someone presses the wrong button and everything gets screwed up and the game is ruined. We don't want that to happen. So here also you see, as we deal the cards, if the cards land on top of each other, they automatically stack. We're trying to remove tedium and simplify things where we can. So here's an interesting detail with the cards, in that there's always going to be some amount of learning with something as complicated as a deck of cards. If you've ever seen little children try to play a game of cards, you know what I mean? Even a real deck of cards, like, can you shuffle this for me? Or they're trying to hold a hand. It takes some learning. So what we've done here is that there's a stack of cards. How do we know whether you want to draw one card off the top or pick up the whole stack? So what we ended up doing was, if you reach out your hand palm down, then you'll take the top card. If you reach your hand out palm up, you'll pick up the whole stack. So it takes a simple explanation like that. It's not something necessarily you'll discover, but once you do, it's very easy. You're not going to mistake this for that. So that disambiguates that well. In addition, I've already mentioned the cards stacking together. That if you bring cards together, they'll automatically stack, keep that clean. And physics is something that's just, in this case, is not super useful. So why not just let things hang in the air, right? If you bring cards out or stacks, you can just drop them and they'll stay where you left them. However, if they're near the table, you do want them to snap to the table. Otherwise, you'll have to figure out how to line them up without going through the table, and that's tedious. Hands are something else that in earlier prototypes, we went overboard and tried to do the whole, like, let's put the cards in your hand, fan them out, arrange them, all this sort of thing. Why not just let them float in space? Now, originally when we did this, for games like that require that you have certain suits, right? If you could tell someone is short-suited, people are not good at lining things up in space. So we did add some helpers. So if you do bring cards together, they'll snap together, and you can grab the whole set and move them around as well. But there's no reason to add complexity and force you to hold them. Then, of course, you can be able to shuffle the deck. In Spaces, we have the ability to have a custom menu for any object that you're holding. So there's just a simple button that says Shuffle. Similarly, you don't have to pick up every single card after the game is over. So by holding a card or a stack, you also get a context menu. You can just say Gather, and all the cards come to you. So basically, cards were fairly complex to get right, to get the feel right in VR, but it boils down to having a single card, having a stack, having a hand, being able to shuffle and deal and gather the cards. That pretty much encompasses a vast majority of card games. The main finding is you really want to keep the core feel, find the things that are important, right? Where you can deal cards, you can hold cards, that sort of thing. But all the other things, use VR to remove the tedium. Like holding cards in your hand, for example, they don't need to actually be in your hand. You can just sort of float them in front of you. And then physics are unnecessary here and a bit of a distraction. So continuing on the game creation side of things, there's also game boards. So here you see we put together this lovely chess set, which, by the way, chess set seems to be like the teapot to graphics, right? Graphics always uses the teapot to show everything. Somehow in VR, everyone always uses chess sets. I don't know why. But game board, basically, you can take any of these 2D images and just say, this is a game board, and then things magnetically attach to it. Makes it much easier to do things like board games. Attachments we released in the last few months. This basically lets you do sort of papercraft. This lets normal people build 3D models. When we released Spaces, we included these markers. You could just draw objects in space, basically little 3D printers. And people tended to opt out of that, saying, oh, I'm not an artist, I don't draw. So we opted for this sort of papercraft system where it's very easy to cut things out, and you can hold things in each hand, bring them together, and they attach. So this lets you build props for games, for board games, to go live. You could build sets, etc. And in essence, this worked well. However, while it does allow pretty much everyone to make 3D models, it was interesting in that hand assembly is both easy and hard, right? Like everyone understands, oh, I can cut this out, I can grab these things, and oh, cool, they stick together. I could like make this house. But as soon as you start to try to make something real or something that has like 50 pieces, and you're really trying to get the angle just right, it's actually surprisingly hard without additional helpers. And it is a fairly heavy investment of time to build interesting things this way. This led us to kits. So in the event, like, hey, let's get together and play chess. All right, well, first let me find a chessboard. All right, let me find an image of chess pieces, and hold on while I cut out each chess piece, and then I duplicate all the chess pieces and line them up on the board, and then 20 minutes later, maybe we can play chess. So what kits do is you only have to do that once, right? Like I can go into VR and build a chess set myself, and then pull out this kit box and say, add to kit. You can see there, I'll grab the box, press the button, and everything on the table, exactly how you've arranged it, will go in the box. You can then take a picture and make a specific label that best shows off your creation. And then that kit can be saved, it can be shared with your friends. So later, when you go back into VR and say, hey, let's play chess, you can just grab from your inventory your chess kit that you built earlier, open the kit, boom, it all comes back and you're ready to go. All right, let's talk a bit about some interesting VR gestures we discovered in the process of building things. One that's really fun is the hand camera. So this is a bit of VR magic where you can just do the director thing, where you can put your hands out like this, right? But if you do that in VR in Spaces, we bring up a little symbol that says, hey, you can take a photo. And if you do that and you just pull your index finger down, you take a photo of exactly what you framed. Super simple, but it's really delightful. People see someone else doing this, and then a picture appears like, oh, how did you do that? And you say, oh, just do this with your hands. You can take a picture. The other interesting thing is that you can really you crop the photo, right? You can make a wide landscape photo or narrow photo, et cetera. So this has been really exciting. It's very simple, but it's really fun doing photography in VR this way. Now, force grab is something entirely different. This is a utility. A lot of people have done things like this in VR. Basically, I want to be able to grab anything regardless of how far away it is. In social VR, this is a bit different because you're in there with other people. So the problem that we're trying to solve is sometimes things end up really far away and you can't reach them. However, you also don't want to just instantaneously zap things into your hand, because if I'm doing something here and I'm looking at this thing and like, oh, I want to grab that, and suddenly it just disappears because my buddy over there just grabbed it, it's very disconcerting. So this is a rough prototype that we did. That basically, what we found is you really want to do something slow, like a use the force sort of thing, right? You want to reach out. You want the thing that you're aiming at to wiggle so everyone in the space can see that that is about to move. And then when it actually comes to you, it actually slides to you over time, so I can see, oh, he's trying to take that thing. No, I'm going to grab it instead. Don't take my thing. So here's an example. Two people in a space. Brian pulls out this cool 3D robot, but then has to go answer the doorbell. So he's gone. Schroeder can't reach it, but he can use distance grab to reach out and then pull it to himself. So, I mean, the findings here are, as I said, right, you really want to use this as a last resort, right? The main thing is you don't want to optimize for this. This is not something you want to be able to just go zip, 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 and manipulate everything super quickly. We don't want people to just sit back with like T-Rex arms and just do everything remotely. We want you to use your hands, be tactile, get out there and reach for things. So it's not designed for efficiency. Others in the space need to understand what is happening. And definitely if something is actually in reach, force grab should not be available. You should actually use your hand. All right, so everything we've talked about up to now has been Facebook Spaces, and it's been synchronous, right? You're both in VR at the same time together. We've begun to explore some systems for interacting with your friends when you're not both online. The first thing that we've explored is visiting an away friend's space. So friends are not always available online. You're not online at the same time. But perhaps it would be great if you could visit that friend's space when they're away and leave them messages or content, things like the chess kit we just saw, right? This would enable asynchronous interactions, and it creates a couple goals right off the bat, where if I go into spaces and none of my friends are available, I can find interesting content, or I can make things and then go to my friend's space and leave them there. And then it also generates the goal of, I want to go into spaces and see what my friends have left for me. So it wasn't clear at the outset whether this would be great or would be a little weird, having someone visit your space when you're not there. It quickly became clear once we stood this up that it's great, right? Because these are your friends. So you go into your space and you see a handwritten note and space markers from one of your friends that has left for you, or a cool 360 they left behind, or this chess set that someone built and left behind for you. So it feels like your friends have been here and they've left things for you. It's very cool. However, we take safety very seriously. From the time that we launched Facebook Spaces version 1, right, we've always had a safety bubble and other things like that to make sure you're in control and you feel safe. Similarly here, you are in control. So when you land in your space, we make it very clear which of your friends has visited. It's very easy to revert your space back to the way that you left it. And if you're not comfortable with the whole system, you can just opt out of it. So here's an example. Sridhar. He's going to go visit Brian's space here. So go visit. So now he's in Brian's space. Brian is not online at the moment, but he is going to take out that chess set that he built, that kit. And here you can see when he opens the kit, it'll restore everything that he built. But now this is in Brian's space. So this is going to be a gift for Brian. So then he goes into his inventory and he pulls out this gift box that he saw in his feed and saved earlier. And he can resize that, and he's going to basically gift wrap the chess set for Brian. And then he grabs a space marker, does a handwritten note, says, "Your move." So next time Brian visits his space, he'll see this giant gift box. He'll lift it up, and there'll be a chess set, and it says, "Your move." At this point, they can actually play chess back and forth over several days. Right? You can take a move and messenger him, say, "Hey, your move," and whenever he has a chance, he'll jump back in. They go back and forth. So that lets us begin to explore how to interact with friends asynchronously. Another way that we're exploring spaces beyond friend interactions are group spaces. So these are spaces that you can host in a Facebook group. So for example, one of the groups I'm in is a 360 panoramic photographers group. They're constantly posting gorgeous 360 photos that look great in spaces. I would usually browse that group and I would save cool photos. I go into spaces and check them out later. Now I can go into spaces and host my space directly in that group. And one of the features of a group space like this is when you bring up your Facebook feeds, the first feed is all the content from that group. So there's all the latest 360 amazing photos. So again, friends are not always available online when you are. And with groups, now we're talking about communities. So these aren't necessarily your friends, but they're people that share your interest. So when you create one of these spaces, not only do you have access to those groups' feeds, but members of that group can just jump in that space with you, even if they're not friends, right? So this is a couple things that we've done in this space to further the group interactions are beyond the in-VR feed of the group's content. You can actually go live or post selfies directly to that group. And in fact, we bring up the live tool by default. So when you land in this space, the live tool is right there. You can just hit go live, and then you can stream directly to that group. In addition, we want to maintain the same controls and patterns that people are used to with Facebook Spaces. So whoever creates a space in one of these groups is the host of that space. They have all the same controls that they do. If someone's being difficult, they can kick them out, et cetera. And we've added additional reporting systems and controls that leverage the Facebook systems to handle difficult situations if they arise. So here's an example, the Furniture Prototypers group. These folks have posted a bunch of furniture 3D models in the group, and a couple of group members are looking at them, and they decide to hop in spaces together and do some interior decoration. So they can, from inside of this group space, they can pull in those 3D posts, arrange them how they like, and in this case, they've live, and they're getting messages from other people in that group saying, hey, rearrange the furniture to look like this, etc. And so if we look back in the Facebook group itself, you'll see that live video and you can respond to it. So we're really trying to foster these VR communities and close this loop so people who share an interest can really interact together. This is something that the community also was asking for. We have a Facebook Spaces community group that's fairly active, and people get together all the time in there, and they were friending each other on Facebook to get into spaces together, and they're asking us, hey, can we just jump into spaces together? And this lets you do that. So things that we're seeing, this is pretty early, but things that we're seeing is that people will meet in one of these group spaces, and they'll become friends. They'll friend up on Facebook, and then they'll meet in their personal spaces afterwards. This really lowers the barrier to meet up, and it's great for things like business meetings, or like Slate does a live show from VR. You could have your guests meet you in the group. They don't have to Facebook friend you. So it's very easy, lowers a lot of barriers that way. As well as with normal friend spaces, we have this sort of invite flow that we do differently in group spaces. In group spaces, anyone in the group can just drop in the room. The door is open, basically. And we found that that's just really lowers the friction. It does need better discovery, though. All right, moving on. So everything you've seen so far is Facebook Spaces, where Spaces is focused on 6 degrees of freedom head and hands. Let's take a quick look at what's going on with the London VR group, who was doing things with the awesome new Oculus Go, the 3 degrees of freedom VR experiences. The London group has just released Rooms 2.0, which we're really excited about. The beautiful new avatars, new environment. You have the ability to watch movies together, movies that you've rented or bought in the Oculus store. You can share photos directly from your phone, so you don't necessarily have to post photos to Facebook to bring them in. You can just bring them directly from your phone. They are also experimenting with tabletop gaming. They partnered with Hasbro, bringing in games like Boggle. This is beautiful. The new environment and the avatars, like we work closely together, and our styles of things are kind of converging. I think this looks just gorgeous. This is really friendly and inviting, a really warm space, and they have spaces to watch content together, so you can co-watch your movies together. You can look at 360 content together. And you can customize your space. So you can choose what photos you hang on the walls. You can change textures and colors. You can even change the three-dimensional environment outside. As I mentioned, one of the first games that they brought in from Hasbro is Boggle. So they've done something very interesting here. So you see how you need to pick a word from the game board there. But you have this 3 degree of freedom controller. So you don't actually you can't just reach out and do things. You sort of have a laser pointer. So what they've done here is very interesting. On the right there is the actual game that you see. But this little grid that is in between you there, sort of at an angle, that's invisible. You can't actually see that. But when you're pointing at it, you're actually pointing at that grid, and that's what selects the piece. Otherwise, you'd have to sort of aim your laser pointer like this to pick things on the board. When you do this, it creates this sort of graceful arc that actually lands on the board. You have no idea this interstitial grid is there. It just feels right. It just works. So very clever, very interesting work done there by the London team. The London team is also building venues, which I believe we talked about at the keynote. This is really exciting. This is exploring public social VR spaces. So hundreds of avatars all together watching an event, in this case, a soccer match. What is really interesting about this has a number of technical challenges, and of course it's exploring an entirely new space of public social VR. But the cloud mixed audio, I think, is really interesting. When you have hundreds of avatars together, you can't have voice channels for every single person. It's just too much network complexity and bandwidth. So what the team is doing is they're taking all those voice channels to the server, mixing them there into a single ambisonic channel that comes back to you. So it's still three-dimensional. You can still hear the crowd cheer when things happen, but it's a single voice channel instead of hundreds coming back to you. They're also using the Facebook social context to help you find people to sit next to. You can, of course, choose to sit wherever you like. But if your friends are there, you certainly want to know that, so you can sit with them. If they're not, maybe friends of friends would be great. So we're trying to give you hints to have a better time. And they've been focusing on, again, safety is very paramount. So making sure that there's robust abuse prevention and real-time ways to handle this, right? Like if you're very excited about this specific event and someone is being difficult, there needs to be ways to handle that right now so the event, you can still enjoy that event. And there are lots of exciting events coming for venues. So basically, to recap what we've been doing in social VR recently, when we launched, both rooms and spaces were focused on synchronous friend VR. So you're in VR at the same time with your friends. Facebook Spaces branched out a bit with VR to 2D with the Messenger video calling. Since that time, since the launch, Spaces added the ability to go live, which lets you broadcast to public. So there's a public VR to 2D angle. And now, with things like visiting a friend's space, we're getting into asynchronous friend interactions. And with venues and group spaces, now we're seeing synchronous public interactions. So we're starting to branch out and explore more ways to interact in VR. Okay, so let's then move on to personally meaningful content. What's really exciting about this is we're starting to see VR native 3D ways to have personally meaningful content. The first one of these is the 3D posts that you've seen that we've launched recently. You can actually post three-dimensional models directly to your news feed. Your friends can see them, rotate them around, interact with them, etc. And of course, you can bring these models directly into VR and hold them in your hands. And as you saw in Rachel's keynote yesterday, a good example of this is her friends who just bought their first house. And so she bought them this awesome, super cool mixer, the Mixinator. I thought the Egg Mutilator 3000 would be better, but apparently that didn't fly. So you can take that model and bring it into AR, so they could actually put that in their new house, see how it would look before the actual object arrives, before the gift arrives. But they can also, you can take that model into spaces, and they can meet up, even if Rachel's on the West Coast and her friend's on the East Coast, take a look at her house and see how the gift would actually look together. We're also looking into 3D photos. This is super exciting, where you can take a photo with your smartphone, upload it to Facebook as a 3D photo, and through machine learning techniques, we actually turn it into three-dimensional geometry. So you can see, as you scroll by, it's like a magic window into these 3D worlds. And when you see this in VR, it's just amazing, because it's literally your friends right there in three-dimensional like presence. It's wonderful. And what's most exciting to me about those things is that everyone can make those, and they're capturing moments from your life. Quill is a very exciting tool that lets artists create VR native artworks and lets you visit fantastical places. But instead of me talking about it, let's let the Quill speak for itself here for a moment. So everything you're seeing here is hand-painted. So you're in VR, you're literally painting in space around you. And the Quill team has recently added the ability to do animations as well. So you're really inside of this world, animating almost magically in VR. And in a case like that car there, right, you're in the car. You're painting this car, but you're sitting inside of it. So you can look around and feel like you're in this car. Exactly what you paint and the art style is up to the individual artist. So in this case, right, you can create one person and then clone them 100 times and make a giant crowd. You can even take something that you've rendered and push it around like claymation. So what's super exciting to me about this is the expressivity and the number of artists that are already making amazing things in Quill. These tools, if you use them, it's hard to explain because you're literally inside your painting, right? You can just make whatever you can imagine. And although, like, this is an art tool made by artists for artists, Here, for example, this is Goro. Goro Fujita is the artist in residence. He and Inigo Quillas is the engineer, and they're driving Quill. You can see like he paints this little green stroke, and then he can grab it, and he can clone it and rotate it around, make a sphere, etc. So he just immersed in this painting that you're creating. So something else that I think has been great is these artists are already collaborating. There's social VR already, right? So Goro made this cool illustration called First Date. This guy is waiting at the door, with a beating heart for his first date. Well, another artist saw this cool illustration posted to Facebook. Kurt saw this, so he went ahead and painted the woman on the other side of the door, right? And then another artist, Mike Corey, thought that they needed to have a sweet ride. So he went and painted this car and brought all these cool illustrations together into this collaborative art piece. This happened again, where Goro made this lovely cardboard go-kart. And again, Kurt saw that and made a cardboard airplane, which then Goro grabbed the cardboard airplane and stuck it into his cool illustration and made a race. But what's super exciting is now you can bring cool illustrations directly into Facebook Spaces. So these amazing artists that are out there making this stuff right now, from inside of Quill, you can post your cool illustration directly to the Cool Illustrations and Spaces group. And then from Spaces, as you can see here, all those cool illustrations directly show up in your inventory. You can pick any of them, and now you're inside of them. All of the existing Spaces systems work. You can take a selfie, you can go live, you can be there with your friends. And those cool illustrations can range from small things on the table, like this one is roughly table-sized, to an entire environment that you're inside of. Brian had a lot of fun. So this one actually has sound effects. There's lightning and thunder jamming out with an octopus. Here's a great example of a completely different photorealistic art style of Quill. Everyone wants to stick their hand in the dragon's mouth. All right, sweet ride, Brian. Okay, so all these things are starting to come together. We're starting to see a social VR ecosystem emerge. So let's take a quick look at what that might look like.
Last night, while I was asleep, I learned to dance, dance, dance in my dreams. And when I opened up my eyes, I saw the sun, and I realized, yeah, it's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a good day.
All right, so you can see bringing together AR camera and cool illustrations, all of these things. It's very exciting. And that song has been stuck in my head for days. Okay, let's talk real briefly about what's next. I am very excited about this. This is some technology that's in research and development right now called point clouds. What this is there's been things like photogrammetry and light fields around that are amazing. If you see these things, you feel like you're actually there. It's photorealistic, oh my gosh, right? But they're technically difficult. They require a lot of computational power. They're hard. The general public can't build these things. What point clouds do is they give you essentially the ability to do that by relaxing some of the constraints. The point of this is it's beginning to be possible for you to take some of your existing 2D content, maybe a video you made 10 years ago, for example, run it through this point cloud technology, and create a VR environment that you can literally be there again. You can stand inside of a place that you used to be 10 years ago. Maybe the place doesn't even exist. I'm very excited about this. So here's an example for you. Here's an iPhone video. This is Ethan, one of the key programmers that's working on point clouds. He just took an iPhone video of part of his house, right? Well, you run this through the system, and you end up with a point cloud representation of what you just saw. Now, this is an early version of point clouds, but each one of those points is a three-dimensional location. So you can actually look under the couch. You can walk around the chair, right? This becomes a three-dimensional environment you can move around in. And what the team has been doing is really working on the artistry of this. So instead of trying to make it perfectly exact, we get the essence of the place so you can be there again. So let's take a look.
For a long time, photos and videos have been the best way to capture and share special moments from your life. Now, new possibilities are being imagined that incorporate virtual 3D environments.
All right, let's get together a little bit.
These immersive experiences, modeled on real places, provide dreamlike settings where your favorite memories can be relived and explored.
I love you, Mommy.
And where family and friends can stay connected with you like never before.
Oh, my little man, he's all grown up.
It's the next evolution in social sharing. Make the most of your memories.
This is going to be very exciting. I think we're going to make people cry. All right, that's all I have. Thank you very much.